The horse suddenly appeared at the ceremony of farewell to the deceased and broke the lid of the coffin with its hoof, and when people found out the reason, they were shocked to the depths of their souls. We often underestimate our smaller brothers, who are much more perceptive than humans. Sometimes animals form such a strong bond with their loved ones that even at a distance they feel the emotions they are experiencing. This story began on a farm in Morocco, near a small provincial town. 65-year-old farmer Salim grew up on his father's farm from childhood, where he was surrounded by numerous animals, primarily cows and horses. Salim fell in love with our younger brothers with all his heart and eventually started his own farm, paying great attention to his beloved horses. For many years, Salim woke up early in the morning and went to the stable when his whole family was still asleep to comb the tail and mane of the horses and feed them. In addition, the farmer felt great pity for sick and injured horses, and cared for them as carefully as for healthy individuals. Although everyone around me thought it was absolutely pointless. Salim had already saved a lot of rundown pets, which their owners were going to ruthlessly euthanize. There were already dozens of horses of different breeds on the farmer's farm, and he did not hesitate to take new pets if he liked them. When Salim was 48 years old, he heard from another farmer that his thoroughbred horse had died in a very difficult birth, giving birth to a very skinny child, whom the owner intended to get rid of because of his lack of prospects. The baby looked completely sluggish and lifeless, could barely open his eyes, and the owner was sure that he would die in a couple of days. Salim decided to look at the unfortunate cub, and the man's heart trembled at the sight of this small defenseless lump that no one needed. Salim immediately offered his neighbor to buy the sick child from him, to which the man was very surprised, not understanding why his friend needed such a starving man. And he warned that he would not return the money to Salim if the pet did not last a week. Shaking hands, the farmer loaded the skinny child into his pickup truck and first of all decided to take him to the vet. After examining the animal and making several analyses, the veterinarian came to the disappointing conclusions that the poor guy is unlikely to last even a few months, adding that with very careful care he may live 1 to 2 years. Salim was no stranger to taking care of weak and injured individuals, so he was not particularly confused by the words of the veterinarian. Returning to the farm, the man allocated a small, clean, well-lit stall to the new inhabitant, and began to pay increased attention to the baby, while carefully, paternally caring for him. Salim named the child Kara, and despite all the gloomy predictions, the man raised the pet year after year until he was 5 years old. Seeing a rather frisky, fast and strong horse in the farmer's farm, others could not believe that not so long ago everyone who met the poor guy did not give him a single chance of survival. Kara became so attached to her savior that she accompanied him everywhere, and seemed to believe that the kind farmer was her only real parent. Salim only joked that he had put so much love into the baby that he had no other choice but to become one of the brightest representatives of his large farm. Unfortunately, a few years later, Salim became very ill. And every day he felt worse and worse. The farmer's wife and children began to perform most of the household duties. And Salim only looked after his pets and gave advice to his loved ones. Kara, seeing how the man was suffering, tried to support the owner as best she could and looked at him for a long time with her big sad eyes. And Salim felt with all his heart that the horse was trying to support him as best he could. A few months later, the farmer had a heart attack. Relatives could not help the man in any way. Salim's funeral was attended by his entire extended family and numerous neighbors. Kara was very worried that day and behaved quite aggressively towards others, so they decided to lock her in a stall. But the feeble bolt could not restrain the rebellious horse, and soon it broke free. Kara rushed straight to the cemetery, which was located not far from the farm. Seeing the aggressive animal approaching, the funeral procession immediately parted, and Kara went straight to the coffin, in which the lifeless body of the owner lay, and began to beat it hard with her front hooves. The surrounding people looked at what was happening in horror, but the horse did not let up. She violently threw off the lid of the coffin and began to sniff the body of her dead master as if possessed. Having recovered a little from the shock, the relatives of the deceased looked into the coffin and were stunned with amazement when they realized that Salim was not lying in the position in which they had laid him. Only now did people realize that Kara was the only one who felt that her master was miraculously still alive, and rushed to the cemetery to save the man. Salim was immediately taken to the hospital, where doctors helped the man to finally recover, and explained to the farmer's relatives that this was a rather unusual case, but by no means unique. It turns out that Salim had catalepsy, a condition very similar to death, when the body completely loses its sensitivity, and almost all signs of vital activity disappear from the patient. The family was horrified to realize that they had almost buried their beloved Salim. If it hadn't been for the punishment that the farmer selflessly saved many years ago, the irreparable would have happened. From that day on, the amazing Kara became a favorite not only of Salim, but also of his entire large, friendly family.